Crack, you can trick shot him.
Tried to shoot him.
Alright. Right here. Really right on me. I kinda just landed in a bad spot. Oh. All three up there?
The horizon.
I got a lifeline.
Yeah, they're all dead.
Hey, what's going on, Champ Squad? My name is Insanity if you guys are new, and welcome back to another Apex Legends video. So today, I'm going to be going over my settings for Season 7 of Apex Legends. Quite a few people have been asking for this in the comments, so I figured I'd go through all the settings I use and discuss why I think they're really good settings for controller players. In the background, I'll have a pretty solid gameplay I got the other day where I nearly dropped 4k damage and 20 kills. And I'm going to go over why I choose the settings that I do, where I think there's kind of some wiggle room and it comes down to preferences for certain settings. But I do think that finding the right settings for me really helped elevate my skill level over the past season or two and help me secure master rank. So I'm going to go over what I think are the most important settings, but I don't think there's necessarily a one-size-fits-all when it comes to settings. It's definitely influenced by several different factors, including your playstyle, past gaming experience, and overall preferences. But there are a few exceptions where I think there are must-haves for certain settings if you want to be the best player possible for Season 7 Apex Legends. And I'm going to go over each of these in turn and discuss kind of the rationale behind why I think certain settings are the best. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So first off, interact prompt style I have on default. This isn't all that important of a setting. It basically just gives you a preview of what you're doing when you interact with a certain item in the game. And for me, I just prefer default, which gives a longer summary of an item compared to the more compact summary. It's not super important, mostly just preference. Button hints I have on, crosshair damage is on the default X with shield icon, and damage numbers are stacking. These are all pretty standard. Ping opacity I have on, minimap rotation off, weapon autocycle on empty. So basically having this on empty makes it so that when you finish your mag with one gun, it'll auto swap to the next gun. And even though I do have this on empty, I always try to switch to my secondary gun before I empty my clip, because it's a lot faster in a gunfight, and you'll be able to kind of beat out your enemy if you can weapon swap faster. But overall, all these settings are pretty standard and not super important in my opinion, and they mostly come down to preference. So next up, we have a really important setting, which is auto sprint, and I highly recommend turning this on if you don't have it on. Making this change has drastically improved my movement since I changed it about 2 seasons ago. After a brief adjustment period, having auto sprint on will make your movement more fluid, you'll get a lot fewer dead slides, and you'll just feel like you have more momentum going for you when you quickly turn or change directions. And overall, I think it's just helped improve my movement a ton, and it's probably one of the most important settings in the game that I think a lot of people are kind of hesitant to try out, but I highly recommend giving it a shot. So another really important setting you guys want to make sure you have right is that you're going to want to have taking damage closes death box menu off. Basically, if you have this setting on, it will pull you out of a death box as soon as you get hit by any shot at all. So if you're looting and you get shot, it'll immediately pull you out. And this is potentially a really big problem, because if you're trying to shield swap and you take any damage, it'll pull you out before you get to pick up the fresh armor, which is obviously a really bad thing. So you're definitely going to want to have this setting turned off. So the next big gameplay setting that I recommend tweaking is putting on Tritanopia for your colorblind mode, even if you're not colorblind. Basically, this setting makes it so that your colors are a lot more vibrant, and you'll get some extra visual contrast that will allow you to differentiate between your enemies and the map a little bit more easily. I feel like it just makes it so that enemies don't really blend in with the map as much, and it's easier to identify them. There's a lot more detailed settings videos about why this is kind of a good setting that I'll link in the description if you want to check them out. So onto controller settings. I don't really play on any crazy custom button loadout or anything like that, but I do have 2 paddles so that I can jump and crouch using those back buttons. I highly recommend getting the Sony back button attachment if you're looking for a cheap paddle option. It's only around $25-30 and it gives you two paddles, which is pretty much all you need for a game like Apex. And it's a much cheaper alternative to something like a SCUF controller, which can break pretty easily and it's a big investment. So with those 2 paddles, you can kind of map them to crouch and jump, which I think are probably the 2 most important things to map them to. And you'll be able to crouch spam and shoot without really affecting your aim, which will give you a huge advantage over most players in this game. But if you don't want to invest in that, that's fine. You can also play on something like tactical controls, where you map crouch to either R3 or L3 so that you can crouch using a stick without affecting your aim really. But I do highly recommend taking crouch off of of circle if that's what you have it on, B or circle depending on what console you're on, and putting it on something else that you can use without really affecting your aim, because crouch spamming will really improve your movement in gunfights and make you a better player. So you're definitely going to want to have your L2, R2 dead zones on none. I made a whole video explaining kind of what dead zones are, which I'll link above. But basically having your trigger dead zones on none makes it so that as soon as you press the right trigger, your gun will start to shoot without any delay. It just makes your controller a whole lot more responsive, which is super important in a game like Apex, where everything's determined by the margins. So a second or two in a gunfight can really be the difference between winning and losing a fight. So you're going to want your controller to respond as quickly as possible. As soon as you press the shoot button, your gun's going to fire. So for menu cursor speed, I highly recommend having the slider to at least the midway point, but really as far right along as possible. This basically will just influence how quickly you can loot a box. You want to be able to control it, but obviously the faster you can loot a box, the better. So bump this up as high as you can manage. Especially when it comes to shield swapping, you're going to want to be able to direct the cursor over to the armor as quickly as possible. So having this up is pretty important. So next up, for sensitivity, I play on 5.4. When it comes to sensitivity, you really got to consider both accuracy and movement. Obviously, as your sensitivity goes up, your movement potential increases, but it may also be harder to land your shots. So it's really about finding that sweet spot between movement and accuracy, and for me, 5.4 is a good balance. I recommend having your look sensitivity at least 4, and your aim down sight sensitivity at least 3. I don't really think you should be playing on 6.6 or anything like that. I don't recommend it, because on console it's just really difficult to control your aim on that higher sensitivity, and there's already a cap on just how good your movement can be on console, so I recommend staying kind of below 5 and between 3 and 5 on ADS sensitivity. So next up, for response curve, I just play on classic. This works for me. I tried linear for a while, and I just find it hard to land my shots, so I recommend sticking on classic unless you're really used to one of the other response curves. Look dead zone I have on small instead of none, because I noticed that if I leave it on none, I get really bad stick drift that makes it hard to control my aim. Movement dead zone I have on small, so that whenever I touch my left stick, my character moves almost instantly. So I also definitely recommend turning vibration off. I've had vibration off in shooters for a while now since I played Call of Duty. I've noticed that without having that kind of vibration feedback on, my accuracy has definitely been a lot better, and I've never really looked back since turning it off. I know a lot of people are kind of used to it, that feedback, that kind of sensory feedback when you're playing is something you're just accustomed to when playing video games, especially shooters, but I do think once you get used to it, your aim will really thank you for turning this off. So that's going to wrap it up for what I think are the most important settings in the game. Obviously there's kind of other settings you can modify, like your audio and some other settings that are, I think, pretty much come down entirely to preference. So I went through what I think are the most important settings for Apex Legends and what I think are the best options for them. I hope you guys took something away from this video. Enjoy the rest of the gameplay. I do end up almost dropping 4,000 damage. I think it's around 3.9k and 16 kills, so it was definitely a good one, rocking the R9 Vault. So I wasn't even really farming damage like I could have been. I probably could have gotten the 4k if I knew how close I was. But anyways, enjoy the rest of the video. Drop a like if you did, a dislike if you didn't, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Okay, that's not the boss gonna play. Broke one of them, and for 20 flash, tank. That kid's cracked. I'm not with though, I'm not pushing. She have this other team too. They getting push? I wouldn't buy into it until there's a knock. One of them still flash.
I think it might just be her ult.
Raid's one.
Yeah.
Deport it back.
It's almost broken.
Mirage is flash.
Checking sectors. Another squad is incoming.
Shotted him too. I need a bat though.
Give me a sec.
I'm on a bat.
Recharging shield.
Very good.
Let's reposition here.
They're right behind this.
One shot, one shot. Another team.
Give my shields a recharge.
It's just the Wraith.
Rings nearby. 1 minute till close.
Yeah, me.
Reloading.
Oh, he got up. I thought you knocked him.
Did knock him. Get res.
Right here.
I'm almost out of ammo. That was no way that was the top Wraith, bro. I think she died earlier, or there was a glitch
he
with the
must have
kill.
died. 9 kills though,
You
jeez.
are the Apex champions.
Yeah, that's crazy.